considering how well the other two versions of this went, it really shouldn't have taken this long to get around to the idea in my personal favourite Fallout. So here's the thing, killing everybody in New Vegas? Pretty simple and rather straightforward endeavour. After all, the concept of essential NPCs is not something Obsidian understands, which is good. Fallout 4, of course, required a mod to make the vast majority of its population killable. At the very least, that kept things interesting, as I had to make sure repeatedly that I didn't softlock myself by accidentally offing somebody semi-important before I was meant to. Now, as for Fallout 3, well, I'm not using mods for this one, rather I am killing everybody that the game allows. Initially, that may sound like a bad idea because, again, some people are essential. Well, you see, Fallout 3 works in a very similar way to that of Oblivion, where some NPCs may be essential when you first encounter them. That tag is often then removed from the character in question once you complete all of the quests that involve them. In other words, I am going to be slaughtering to my heart's content and occasionally completing quest lines to make people ripe for the reaping. Also, Fallout 3 has some rather interesting options available to us to make the further destruction of the wasteland just a little bit more enjoyable over New Vegas and Fallout 4. The good thing about these types of runs is, other than making sure I'm knee-deep in bodies by the end, there really aren't any other rules, so I am free to tackle this as I see fit. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin. First things first, I am a girl today. Majority of the enemies in Fallout 3 are men, and since the confirmed bachelor perk doesn't exist in this game, taking Black Widow for the 10% extra damage against males seemed like a no-brainer. The run is off to a fantastic start as we already have our first kill on the board. Thanks, Mum. On to my specials, pretty basic stuff, drain charisma as it's worthless, especially today, and then dump the rest of the points into endurance and intelligence. Extra health and skill points are always the best options in my opinion. If it was New Vegas, I'd probably reconsider and toss them into strength because of melee weapons, but I don't think I'll be using many of them today. Anyway, fast forward to the birthday, and I am thankful that for once I don't need to sorta kinda feel the run due to the death of the Radroach. A white flash, and suddenly we are 16 years old and practicing our murderous intent on the other teenagers. I skip the goat for the sake of efficiency, and take small guns, medicine, and repair as my tag skills. Finally, we are of age, which means we can kiss our neighbours goodbye with a bullet and a bat. Of course, all the officers die, no questions there, but I make sure to go out of my way to finish off Butch and his mother. Next was Officer Gomez, who didn't put up much of a fight. Andy and Stanley, on the other hand, well, they will need to be left till later. Stanley is a somewhat integral part of the return mission to the vault, so we'll need to get him then. I continue to murderize some more random residents who I've never met before, as well as some security, before coming face to face with Officer Mac and the Overseer. That feels a little disingenuous. Mac had his head removed from his shoulders before he even really knew I was there. Give him his dues, the Overseer attempts to fight back. Unfortunately for him, it has cost him one of his legs. And his life. I make sure to grab whatever supplies I could at this point before heading for the exit, where I am berated by Amada. Not to worry, I'll make sure you get to see your father again very soon. After this exchange, there are two more guards that approach who are swiftly dealt with, and now it is time for death to familiarise ourselves with the wasteland. Of course, we level up as soon as we set foot outside, and I decide to just play it smart. While it would be beneficial to increase my damage output, I figured if I'm murdering everyone, I'm not going to have any merchants available for repairs, so I'll need to rely on myself. In other words, that's the first stat I plan to max out. And then, of course, my first perk is Black Widow. No reason it shouldn't be after all. First off, I visit Silver and give her the old razzle-dazzle, and then I take the 400 caps from her corpse, along with anything else remotely shiny from her house. Megaton was my first real stop, and it does not take a genius to figure out how I am going to deal with 99% of its population. Before we light the candle, however, I make my way over to Craterside Supply to get the armoured vault suit, along with any healing supplies Moira has for sale. Ammo should never really be an issue, as yes, while I will be using more than normal, again, I am not restricted by what I use, so I should always have something at my disposal to cause destruction. With my short shopping stint over, I have a pleasant conversation with Mr. Burke and get to setting up the pulse charge. I also made sure to grab the strength bobblehead before I left. Figured I probably wouldn't be able to find it in the rubble in the aftermath of my actions. The jog from here to Tenpenny Tower was about what you'd expect: some mole rats, vicious dogs, and bloatflies. In other words, ammo wasters. Speaking of, I attempted to kill RL3 and Tinker Joe, but I quite literally did not have enough ammo to finish off RL3. I'll just have to leave him for now until I come back with either more ammo or stronger weapons. I won't want to leave it too long, however. In fact, it would be a smart idea to kill all of the potential companions as soon as physically possible. The higher your level, the more health and damage they do. In the cases of RL3, Dogmeat, Karen and Fox, they can eventually become nigh unkillable. Karen and Fox, at the very least, I can just reverse pickpocket a grenade into their inventories for an instant kill, but I'm pretty sure that's not possible with the non-humanoid followers. Anywho, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, I listen to some blatant racism and then head back in to meet up with old Mr. Burke and Alistair Tenpenny for my front row seat to the fireworks show. And it is a marvellous show at that. For a job well done, Tenpenny invites me to become a permanent resident in his tower, to which I accept. The problem for him is I have illusions of grandeur and I would much rather be the sole proprietor of this tower. Rather than shoot Alistair and Burke first and just work my way down, I figured it made more sense to cut the head off the snake right away, so I made sure Chief Gustavo was the first to go. I wanted to momentarily help Roy Phillips and his ghouls so they would run into the place and kill all the residents just for a bit of fun, but I've had a couple of issues in the past with that quest where it causes some people to despawn, and we're just not about that today. It's not a big deal, doesn't take very long to dispatch the residents after all. The guards can pack a punch, but they also supply me with ammo and armor, so I can't complain too much. The best kill here was Herbert Daring Dashwood, simply because this granted me access to a combat shotgun. Not only is it one of my favourite weapons in the base game, but it does incredible damage this early on, and as a result, greatly speeds up the culling. As I said, since I'm working my way up, the final two to go are Burke and Tenpenny, neither of which proved much of a challenge. After getting rid of Alistair's corpse, we are informed that I can tell Roy he can move in. This is the game's way of telling you you're a psychopath and have murdered all of the residents. Again though, I don't want to share, so it's down into the metro tunnels, everyone's favourite part of Fallout 3, to find and hunt down some zombies. I report the purge to Roy before ending his life because I really wanted the ghoul mask. I won't be using it to avoid ghouls obviously, I just think it's neat. During all of this, I unfortunately broke my shotgun due to all of the ghouls that I was putting down, but I was able to get some decent mileage out of Burke's silent pistol. Straight up, don't think I've ever used this before. I like it, it's cool. Anyway, I mop up the final few named ghouls down here and make my way back to the surface. I wasn't entirely sure where I wanted to burn down next, so I figured I could go back and marvel at my handiwork for the time being instead. It's a good thing I did too, as I actually nearly completely forgot that Moira survives the blast and gets ghoulified. Luckily for her, I have a cure for that problem right here. With no real sense of direction, I decided to just head for Arefu. It's a small settlement, sure, but it is relatively close to Megaton, and no reason to not wipe it off the map now. Had some fun on the way there with a few different groups of raiders, probably goes without saying, but given that I am going after everything in this playthrough, mainly named NPCs, I'll probably not be talking a hell of a lot about normal encounters with groups like raiders and super mutants. The video would probably end up being way too long at that rate, as if it isn't already. Well, I did manage to score a flamer off of one of the raiders though. Doubt I'll get a lot of use out of it for now, but I can think of at least one scenario where it might come in handy. Arriving at the town, and I do agree to help them out. This is just so I can get the location of the vampires, as I tend to forget where exactly they're located. I set off on my vampire slaying quest, all the while very intent on coming back and offering the citizens of Arefu the same treatment once I'm done. Before getting to the family, I come across a ghoul doctor and his bodyguard, dealt with them like I did all the others, and before long was once more deep underground and ready to smite some creatures of the night. Stakes may not be something I can get a hold of, but Tenpenny sniper rifle was a sufficient replacement. Once it was out, I swapped over to some of my automatic weapons and just began to light the place up. They were actually a hell of a lot weaker than I remember them being in the past, if I'm honest. Although, by this point, while I am only level 6, I have maxed out repair and have now moved on to increasing my weapon skills. Best part of all of this is the family's massive number of supplies. This means I'm able to find ammo for just about all of my weapons, along with stuff for repairs and healing supplies. I'm actually really glad I decided to do this early. Being the sole survivor, I send Ian back to Arefu, not to save him per se, but rather to get me the XP for finishing the quest and rounding up all the villagers in one very convenient area, making cleansing a lot more efficient. With that out of the way, it was time to bite the bullet and head for the scrapyard and do something nobody is going to like. A lot of people got understandably sad that this had to be done in the Fallout 4 run as well, as let's be real, he is everybody's favourite companion and really doesn't deserve this. But this needs to be done sooner rather than later because, as I stated earlier, he is going to start getting ridiculously strong. The silver lining is that at the very least his attacks are easy to avoid, so it's not so much a situation of who kills who, but rather how much ammo is this going to cost me. The answer? All of my frag mines, as well as the vast majority of my shotgun shells. It still takes a bit, but finally we can unfortunately put down our best friend. To cope with my deeds, I did take something to remember him by. After the deed was done, I left the scrapyard and apparently missed some sort of commotion, judging at least by the Deathclaw and Outcast bodies. Well, just one less thing for me to kill, I suppose. As I am in the area, I head north for a minute to prove to Arkansas that I am the superior sniper, and I do this by sneaking up on him and using a sniper rifle of my own. Again, with no clear direction, I figured I could just start the main story to pass the time. That means I should be heading over to GNR to meet Three Dog, which means it's back to ground zero. Fortunately, when I arrive, Wolfgang is there, so I can cross off one of the 4 travelling merchants. The fastest way to get all 3 of them is probably just fast travelling back and forth from here to Rivet City, so I'll more than likely do that later on, once I actually make it to the boat. I quickly head north towards the Super Duper Mart, silence a few raiders, and then make my way into the oh so wonderful metro tunnels. Not much to worry about down here, because you're meant to come this way at the beginning of the game, so not a lot can harm you. Plus, most of the enemies are feral ghouls who will never attack me first, thanks to that ghoul mask I'm refusing to take off. I thought that when I re-emerged from the tunnels that some of the mutants may have given me a hard time, but that wasn't the case either. Sure, the Lion's Pride helps deal with a good chunk of them, but even when I was left alone with them, I had way more than enough ammo to comfortably deal with them without breaking a sweat. After clearing out the initial wave, just outside the radio station of course, the behemoth appears. I didn't really have a reason not to, but I opted to not use the Fat Man or its limited ammunition, and rather just take the giant down with my other weapons. It takes a little longer, yeah, but at least this way I don't need to worry about accidentally meat-rocketing myself before the end. I do take the Fat Man for what it's worth, can't think of too many scenarios outside of other behemoth encounters where it may come in handy, but better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, and wish I could atomize somebody. Anyway, I make my way to the top of the station where I quickly position myself just out of sight at the bottom of the stairs so that I may separate Three Dog's head from his torso without him getting all defensive about it. Now as for the rest of the station's occupants, well, to my surprise, all of them, even the named Brotherhood members excluding Sarah Lyons and Paladin Vargas, could in fact be killed right now. It makes sense, with Three Dog gone, there's no reason for the player to ever really come back here, so no reason to keep them alive. They are stronger than most of what I've faced thus far, but I was able to take a good chunk of them down with all the ammo I've been hoarding for my Chinese assault rifle. After that, I roast and toasted the final few before making my way outside to clean up anybody who thought escape was a viable option. Just like before, no clear direction, so it's back to following the main quest to a degree. Granted, with Three Dog gone, I don't have an actual marker to follow, so I figured it just made the most sense to head straight for the Jefferson Memorial rather than bypass it to Rivet City, only to have to double back on myself. Rather than head straight there are a couple of NPCs that I need to take out along the way. That was for you, Paul. A couple of other stragglers around here that need to be put in their place, like this nameless scavenger and the troll raiders. May have gone a little overboard dealing with the latter, but it cannot be helped. A few more raiders get to see justice firsthand, and as I am here, I make a very slight detour to extend the same gift to everybody at Dukov's place. Not a single one of them fights back, which is always pleasant. On my way from here to the memorial, and I ran into a random lone Enclave soldier. This is only worth noting, as I was under the impression they didn't appear until after you first met them at the Purifier. I suppose he might just be scouting out the memorial? Speaking of, I just burned out the mutants thanks to Vance's shish kebab. Kinda nutty how much damage it inflicts, considering I have yet to really increase my strength or melee weapon skill at all. I got some mileage out of the hunting rifle as well, to be fair. May as well, as most of the super mutants drop ammo for it this early on, so running low is not something to worry about. After the greens have been dispatched, I assault a few more of them up the road, so that I may rescue and subsequently murder their prisoners. Arriving at Rivet City, and before heading in, I get rid of Crow, his guard, and his Brahmin. Not much to say on that. The Brahmin was the strongest of the three, as the travelling merchants Brahmins always seem to have an absurd amount of health in Fallout 3. Now, to briefly disappoint some of you, myself included, I forego a killing spree on the boat. For now. I need to finish the replicated man quest before I can deal with Harkness or Dr. Zimmer, so I'd like to get that out of the way first so that the purge can be more efficient. Come to think of it, I'll also need to get rid of Dr. Lee and her science team, but that will sort itself out in the main quest, thankfully. I get to talking with people about the android, but I've kinda murdered a lot of the people thus far that would have given me the info to go track down Pinkerton for the final stage of the quest. And no, you can't just skip all the investigating and head straight there. I tried that, and there is no option to even mention the synth. Plus, his computer is completely inaccessible as well. Thankfully, we're in luck, as there's some folks in Underworld who can help us with this matter before they get added to the body count. Luckily, we'll actually be there in a few minutes, by way of travelling through the metro tunnels just outside of the city. The first ghoul we encounter, Winthrop, spills the beans about Pinkerton immediately, so in other words, this town just lost its one and only bargaining chip. Underworld only has one ghoul who is even slightly combat ready, and that would be our dear old friend Karen. I thought for a brief moment about making him my follower and letting him do the deed, but again, like Dogmeat, I'd rather not risk him becoming a bullet sponge and just decide to get rid of him now along with the rest of the horde. Once the ghouls are all done, I turn my attention to Riley, and to my surprise, I'm able to take her out. Not only that, but doing so does not fail the Riley's Rangers quest. This is good. Now we can hunt them down for sport. Before heading back to Rivet City, I run into the actual museum part of this museum to get the Lincoln memorabilia, mainly the rifle. This may not be a Lincoln run, but his repeater is so absurdly powerful that I would just be hindering myself by not getting it. As I was heading back to the soon-to-be floating coffin, I took out some random Brotherhood soldiers and then figured it couldn't hurt to meet the slavers down by the Lincoln Memorial. That encounter was about what you might expect at this stage. I'll need to track down Hamlin and the other escaped slaves at some point, but all in due time. For once, I am trying my absolute best to not get sidetracked. After this, I return to Rivet City to deliver the good news to Harkness that he is in fact a robot. He isn't best pleased about this, but on the bright side, doing things this way lifts the essential tag from Zimmer and his bodyguard, allowing me to go in and blast them. I also have permission from Harkness to do this, so I don't need to worry about the rest of the ship going on high alert. Better yet, I get one of the best weapons for the early to mid game, assuming you're not bum rushing the DLCs like a smart person. I may use it here and there, but I had something else in mind that I wanted to save all the ammo for. I could start riddling the ship and its crew with bullets, but I figured it's still smart to leave that until after I have brought James back to Rivet City before he offs himself. I have had some issues in the past where I've gotten softlocked due to the town being hostile, and that causing James to not speak with Dr. Lee. It's going to sound like a broken record how many times I'm going to say, I had issues with a quest, but that's just Fallout. Well, I am still bloodthirsty however, so I head on up to the highest part of the ship so we can give Mr. Lopez his wings in more ways than one. After that, I figured, you know what, I may as well just blast out the main quest now rather than later. Given the nature of this run and the fact we have been over this multiple times, I'm not going to cover all of the main story, just the parts that are relevant to this run. Gotta save time where we can after all. The journey to Smith Casey's had 2 detours of worth. The first wasn't important, but I just wanted to include the scuffle between me and 2 raiders that resulted in all of us getting knocked off our feet. Fortunately, I fared a lot better than them. Next stop is one you probably already assumed, and it was of course Evergreen Mills for the behemoth and raiders that are present. Trying to keep the murder fresh and exciting, I used Tenpenny's sniper rifle to take out the generators to the behemoth's cage, allowing Big Green here to get his revenge. I sat back and enjoyed the show for a few minutes, then once I was certain that he'd dealt with the final one, I turned my sights on him. I used a few Fat Man shells, or rather wasted I suppose, seeing how he couldn't reach me, so I was in no rush to take him down before he attacked. I noticed this all too late, so then I just switched over to the repeater to finish the job. Last bit of business here is to make my way inside to deal with a handful of nameless nobodies, and of course, Smiling Jack. One part for the sake of the run, and another for his terrible not so terrible shotgun. Jack, despite never leaving this cave, has a surprising number of worthwhile supplies at his disposal. So, other than the shotgun, I am leaving with a lot more ammo and stim packs than when I entered. Making it to the vault, and I realize that for the very first time in a Fallout 3 run, I am not restricted by weapons, time, or some other such nonsense, meaning I can actually take part in the fun side of the Tranquility Lane quest. Ironically though, this is the one time where I will need to activate the failsafe, because even though it's a mercy killing for all of the residents, it's still killing nonetheless, and therefore must be done. Thankfully, the game does let you do it after finishing all of Betty Braun's other tasks, so I get the best of both worlds in this scenario. With Dad rescued, it's another roundabout trip to Rivet City before heading back to Project Purity.
Garza is in need of medical attention immediately. He has a heart condition.
No, it doesn't.
All but one of the scientists and helpers can be killed straight away, which is nice. The other one will be taken out by Autumn, so no need to worry about her. After pinching some wires and pushing some buttons, the Enclave arrives. Thankfully, my shotgun makes terribly short work of all of them. I get rid of them all so fast that once again, when I make it into the purifier for the cutscene, I am able to get within strangling distance of Autumn before the door closes. Sadly, the game doesn't let you draw your weapon here, or I would be loading back to toss grenades into the room. I also tried planting explosives in this pocket with a third-person camera glitch, but that didn't work either. I don't know why I'm doing this, considering they all die of severe radiation poisoning in the first place, but oh well. The escape through the tunnels goes quicker than normal. I, of course, stopped to deal with the Enclave and ghouls and whatnot, but having a max science skill also allows me to bypass the terminal that takes Dr. Lee forever to deal with. The final person to kill down here is actually the Brotherhood member with the flamethrower. Easy enough, especially when you surprise him. I was afraid that this might make Dr. Lee hostile and cause some sort of trouble getting her to the Citadel, but to my delight, she seemed way more enthusiastic about the kill than even I did. At the Citadel, I get my power armor training, along with the possibility to end the Brotherhood's leadership in Fallout 4 before it has a chance to begin. We can deal with that, and the rest of the chapter later. For now, we get the information we need about the Gek, and then head back out, although not straight for Lamplight. Around this point, you can begin picking up the radio signal near Vault 101, allowing you to come back and help out. This quest actually seems to have a time limit on it, so I opt to return right away, lest we lose the opportunity to finish our culling at the start of the run. The good thing about this return trip is that due to me taking out everyone when I left, there are barely any guards, let alone residents, left to deal with. A few only spawn in during this visit, but even still, it's not much. Plus, everyone is non-essential now, so you know what that means. It's good to be home. Gotta love how using Fat Man shells on a behemoth is a waste to me, but using them on single, squishy, mostly unarmed targets is fair game. Maybe I like the irony of using the mini nuke inside the bunker that's meant to protect people from them, but who can say. With 101 cleanse, the smart thing to do now would be to make my way to Lamplight to wrap up the main quest, but because nothing in this playthrough is being done optimally, I instead journeyed back to Rivet City and began to put Harkness's gun to good use as I gooified most of the residents. To say they put up a fight here is laughable. So once I'm finished, I make a brief pit stop just outside of my tower to take out one of the last surviving companions, that of course being RL3, along with Tinker Joe. As I mentioned earlier, the longer I left the companions, the stronger they would become, and that's no more apparent than with RL3 now. After 3 Fat Man shells took him down to just half of his health, I realised it wasn't going to be a one-shot wonder. Fortunately, I don't think his damage increases all that much per level, it's mainly just his health. So I was able to just stand in front of him and unload shell after shell after shell with a terrible shotgun until he was in need of an oil change. To help balance out the absolute mountain of misdeeds in this playthrough, my next stop was Paradise Falls, one of a handful of places where murdering the locals is not only fun, but also morally correct. For old time's sake, I busted out the repeater on my way in. Truly, there is no better instrument for committing slaver genocide. As we all know by now, Lincoln's repeater is absurd in Fallout 3 and can easily carry you from start to finish, so it should shock no one that it cuts down the slavers by the entrance in no time at all. Because I have used it extensively before, and the fact this is a rather close quarters environment, I ended up switching over to the shotgun to deal with the rest. Clover was one of the first to meet her end after stupidly entering its blast radius. Unlike the other companions, she doesn't seem to be all that tough, however. I think all that leaves is Fox now. Well, there is Star Paladin Cross, I suppose. However, she will be dealt with the rest of the Brotherhood in due time. Back to the matter at hand, after the outdoors area is mopped up, I begin cutting my way through the buildings. You would think the shotgun would still be the way to go, but considering how much ammo I was hoarding for the damn thing, I decided it was time to use the Chinese assault rifle again. After all, Eulogy Jones did not seem to have any good way to counteract a good old spray and pray. On my way to Lamplight via Smithcase's garage as per usual, there are some outcasts roaming the area. So I put the Fat Man through its paces yet again, this time actually getting a multi-kill that doesn't require multiple shots or a reload due to my limbs prematurely leaving my torso. I take all of their armors and glue them together to make myself a pseudo-outcast armor that will hopefully trivialize whatever the mutants throw at me in Vault 87. Thanks to me briefly tapping into Lincoln 2.0, I am allowed access to Lamplight without having to pass any speech checks, which is always pleasant. My first order of business is to take out Sticky now that he has become of the age where it is socially and morally acceptable to murder him. No, like, really, it's okay, you don't even lose any karma for it. Even the game knows that Sticky is annoying as fuck. I have the technical know-how to bypass Murder Pass and head straight for the vault, but it wouldn't be much of a kill everything run if I ignored some potential fresh meat now, would it? Not gonna bother going over the vault. I've slaughtered countless super mutants in a multitude of ways to get to this point. Taking out a few more is not a big deal. Of course, there is one fight in here worth mentioning, and it's Fox. Now, any time before where I have needed / wanted to kill Fox for whatever reason, I tend to just reverse pickpocket a grenade into him as it's always a guaranteed instant kill. Problem is, that does not work here. Even if you crouch down next to him, you won't be able to pickpocket and instead will just talk with him. Now, I could wait until after Ravenrock and just shove a bottle cap mine into his trousers once he attempts to rescue me. However, there is no guarantee that Fox will even show up at that point. Why? Glitches. Remember the Fallout 3 as a group video where he just despawned from the game world? Well, that has happened to me enough times at this stage that I am not willing to take the chance, so I will instead have to go about this the old-fashioned way. Looking at this like a glass half full situation, since we can speak with him, that means we can trade, and therefore we just take his super sledge. This will greatly reduce his damage output. To be fair, you should always take the super sledge anyway, as it's a unique variant that does more damage than the base version, and is normally only obtainable during this quest, as once he is outside, he tends to replace it with a Gatling laser, and that just seems to cause the super sledge to despawn for seemingly no reason. He still has a normal sledgehammer, but I can just tank the damage from that thanks to my power armor. So, much like RL3, it's just a battle of attrition as I slowly whittle his health down over the course of a few minutes. Not a big fan of how much ammo it used, but I'm not going to pretend like I don't have an entire arsenal at my disposal. The likelihood of all my weapons running dry is nigh impossible. After I finally put him down, I begin making my way through the rest of his brothers until I finally reach the Gek, and thanks to the old radiation-proof doorway and a crap ton of Radaway, can retrieve it with zero problems. I am then flashbanged and taken prisoner because Bethesda have a fetish for prison escape stories. There's an easy to miss indirect kill during the conversation with Autumn, so due to the nature of the run, it is vital that I tell him the wrong code so that he sends one of his men in to get his DNA mutilated by the radiation in the chamber. Shortly after, we are released from our cell and I'm ready to go killing again. And this time, I was going full scorched earth. Given the Hellfire Troopers are going to start popping up from the next mission onwards, all of which carry incinerators with a good chunk of ammo, I can start using this fuel guzzler without a care in the world. Clearly the Enclave don't have a lot in the way of fire resistance, as even their most defensive troopers and sentry bots prove no match for the Flamer. I took a quick sidestep to grab the self-destruct codes from Autumn's chambers so that I can confirm with 100% certainty that the sentient gaming PC is shut down for good. The way out was about the same as the rest of the base up to this stage. I did release a Deathclaw from captivity for good measure in hopes that it would slaughter those up ahead. While it seemed that way at first, it only took the creature a few seconds to turn on me, by which point I was forced to put it down. I deal with a handful of stragglers outside the base that would usually be diced up by Fox, and then immediately head back to the Citadel to wrap up the original main quest. Given the appearance of the 20-foot death robot strolling down the street with us, we don't have a lot of opportunities to do some killing of our own, given that this death ray does all the work for us. I made sure to search all of the giblets however, so I could snag some sets of Hellfire armor, along with more flamer fuel and heavy incinerators. I didn't get much use out of the incinerator yet, but that's mainly due to the fact that I saved my final mini nuke for the last encounter, so that I may shove it inside Autumn's chest with the force of 1,000 suns. Before entering the code, I made sure to install the FEV virus, that way we can chalk up a whole bunch of indirect kills. Granted, they won't get tallied up or counted in any way, shape or form, but we know for a fact that we have made the irradiated death water even worse, so that's a plus in my book for today. Normally, this is where most runs would end, but as of today, we still have quite a lot to do. It made the most sense to jump into Broken Steel right away and get that over with, given how much carnage we can cause, and like most Fallout 3 DLC, it is ridiculously short. So, of course, that is not what I did, and instead I went and started Mothership Zeta. Why? Well, for one, I wanted the Alien Blaster as it's a near 1 or 2 shot kill on everything, so it'll speed things up immensely, and 2, I plan to hit all the DLCs during this run, so I may as well do this one now. Not much to say, again, DLC short, plus other than the aliens who I will obviously be killing all of, the only other people of note are Soma and the 3 time popsicles, all of which go down without much hassle. Soma I just beat up with a shock baton while she's distracted. The samurai and cowboy share similar fates, as what better way to deal with an ice cube than by setting it on fire. All that left was Elliot, who for whatever reason, I decided to switch over to the shotgun to finish off. From here it's just a normal 3 objectives until I reach the death ray. Now normally the death ray is just pointed past Earth, so if you try to fire it, it'll just go past the planet and hit nothing. However, there is another button nearby which will change its direction, so now when we fire the laser, it directly hits somewhere on the planet. I know Fallout's world is mostly destroyed and shit, but look at the size of that blast. That definitely killed a bunch of people. You cannot convince me otherwise. Does this mean out of all the other kill everything runs that the Lone Wanderer has by far the highest kill count? Potentially, but even if they don't yet, we're still not finished. Anyway, once that's done, it's not long before I reach the bridge, whereby use of extreme force can persuade the aliens that I am the captain now. Yet again, the Wanderer's kill count skyrockets as we put the weapon system of the ship to use once more, this time turned on another alien vessel, who was not prepared for how well I could rotate between pressing 2 different buttons. Now that the planet was saved so that I may ruin it myself, I teleport back to Earth, grabbed the alien blaster we did all that for, and began hitting up all the smaller settlements and outposts that I have yet to pay a visit to. First up, one of everyone's favourites, Canterbury Commons. I get to play the role of ambiguously neutral anti-hero by strolling into the town and turning their only source of entertainment into dust. To give credit where credit is due, those costumes of theirs are no joke apparently. It took multiple shots from the alien blaster to take each of them down, which is normally never the case for human enemies except those in power armor. It's probably due to the fact that I'm level 23 and they've leveled with me if I had to guess. With them no more, the townsfolk come to congratulate me, which I mean, maybe not the best idea for all of you to come out into the open, given the nature of this run, but I won't complain about some easy sport. I have a few little settlements that need my help up in the northeast corner of the map, so I may as well go get them now while I'm in the area. The first one is the Temple of the Union, who have been on my radar since I dealt with their former masters earlier. I couldn't remember if I needed to do something to get inside, so I kinda just began lobbing grenades in through the windows, and this worked out very well. One of them actually managed to hit Hannibal, so he came to see what the ruckus was about, and fortunately, thanks to my horrible pitching arm, one of the grenades missed the window, bounced off the wall, and proceeded to land directly at his feet as he rounded the corner and killed him before he could really do anything of worth. The rest of his followers, lightly armoured as they were no match for my weapons. At least that's what I would be saying, but they seem to be dealing with an infestation at the time, which seems to have offed most of them. Fine by me, I just clean up what's left along with the ants, and it's time to continue. Around this stage, you may be wondering if everything you're doing is morally correct. Like, is all this death truly worth it? Well, thankfully, at this very moment, I was granted a vision from God. That is when I witnessed a Deathclaw, a creature so in tune with the forces of death that it is part of its very name, ascend to the heavens as it was lifted to the gates above. Surely this is my fate if I continue on this path, so with my newfound faith, I pressed on to the citizens of the Republic of Dave, whom I immediately made hostile by pretending to be a communist. The town was in a rather sorry state and seemed to be low on funds, so I did the right thing by immediately cremating all of them, as to avoid funeral costs. Now, heading west for another group to purge, I ended up bumping into Mel, the would-be raider. Goes as well as you might think for him. He was of course not the main reason I was heading this way. No. The real reason was Oasis. The tree huggers, as you might expect, are indeed quite flammable. I do so enjoy any chance I get to use this heavy incinerator. Now I know what you might be thinking, well it's time to travel through the caves to reach Harold's heart and crush it in my big metal hands. Okay, yes, however, counterpoint. Okay, so we can all agree that that scream will haunt us for the next few days, so to distract myself from that, I worked my way to the Germantown police station so that I could off Red and Shorty. Not wanting to leave a job half finished, I headed further south to their home of Big Town and made sure the rest of their neighbours got a similar style of treatment. Fair for one is fair for all. I took any and all of their supplies as well for good measure, that way when the immortal children of Lamplight lose their powers and are kicked out here, they will have nothing to aid them in their survival. Yay! Okay, I'm going to speed through these next ones as to not drag this on too long, as I'm at around 7,000 words into the script and still have a good chunk to cover. Andale was next on the chopping block, which was only fitting given the whole cannibalism shtick they got going on. Shame that I had to dispose of the old man as well though. Sorry about the chance of a somewhat normal life, kids. Wanna move to Big Town? After Andale was finished, I went to an even smaller settlement, if you could even call it that, as it only had 2 people in it. I am, of course, talking about Girdershade, home of everyone's favourite Nuka-Cola addict, and possibly worst fetch quest in the game if you had been knocking back quantums for the sake of it. With the residents' deaths, we have not only created a mild time paradox for Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC, but has successfully failed yet another quest. To keep the ball rolling on that type of failure, I paid Agatha a visit and taught her the Song of My People. The most interesting part about dealing with her wasn't the kill itself. Rather, it was when I fast travelled to the closest location to her house, I was immediately filled with a sense of confusion and dread when for the briefest of moments I was entirely convinced Malcolm Holmes had somehow crossed time and space to assault me with his knowledge of limited edition bottle caps. Thankfully, it was not the case, and my mind was just playing tricks on me. Even still, I must keep my guard up. There is still a handful of pockets of civilization left that are worth wiping out, but for a slight change of pace, and because most runs don't make it this far, I made my way back to the Jefferson Memorial to talk to Scribe Bigsley so that I may get the water-related side quests only available if you have Broken Steel installed. They're interesting enough, I suppose. Both just involve trying to swindle people of the Wasteland's new supply of free water, which, given what I have done to it, is inadvertently a good thing. The Aquacura side of things deals with this snake oil salesman ghoul who is reselling the water as Aquacura. Except he is only selling it to ghouls, and since they won't notice a difference, is just dumping the fresh water and replacing it with the normal irradiated stuff. After finding this out, we deal with his guards, then travel back to the museum to permanently put a stop to him, along with the new nameless underworld citizens who had the audacity of spawning in today. The second quest is helping out Rivet City security with a gang that has been attacking their water transportations. After some light work, you'll find out their holdup at Grandma Sparkle's old place, so we head over there to deal with them. I had no reason to do this, but I ended up goading the leader into an honourable duel with lead pipes, where I of course emerged the victor. Once the deed is done, his men agree to continue bringing in the caps, but will cut me in on some of the profits. It's not much of a deal given that just about every single merchant and vendor is no more, so I obviously refuse and just provide them with a more permanent solution to this whole ordeal. After the quest was done, I made my way back to Rivet City and took out the new officer as well, just in case you're wondering. As for Scribe Bigsley and those inside Project Purity, well, like the rest of the Brotherhood of Steel, they are currently essential, but we can fix that once we complete Broken Steel. I know I keep mentioning Broken Steel, but I kind of wanted that to be one of the final things that I tackled. So, where does that put us now? The way I see it, if I'm doing Broken Steel, I may as well tackle the other DLC, shouldn't I? Between Point Lookout, Operation Anchorage, and the Pitt, I decided to go with the Pitt first. Why? Simply put, one of my favourite weapons is there, so I may as well go after it first to get some use out of it. I feel like half of this run is dedicated to the art of killing, and the other half is just an excuse for me to mess around with some of my favourite guns. Anywho, we meet up with Werner, and he tells us to take out some nearby raiders, free some slaves, and then take one of their outfits so that I can slip in as one unnoticed. I kind of follow his instructions, except I just kill everybody. I don't even know why you have to disguise yourself as a slave, given that as soon as you enter, Werner just lets his bullets fly and attacks the raiders anyway. So I just re-equip my power armor to help deal with them, as well as any others I come into contact with on the bridge until I properly start the DLC. How a few lightly armored men with batons can inflict any substantial damage on my Hellfire power armor is beyond me, but plot, I suppose. Once inside, I am sent to work at the steel mill right away. This is where we can find that weapon that I was talking about. It's not just lying around, rather I need to collect 50 steel ingots to get it as a reward. It's a tedious yet mostly risk-free task. The only issue I ran into was when the ground refused to render in properly and caused me to plummet through into my death, essentially forcing me to start my collection from scratch. Thankfully, I think, this is a well-known bug that is easily fixed by just quitting back to the main menu and reloading your most recent save. After about 10 to 15 minutes, I have not only put a sizable dent in the Trog population, but have collected a substantial amount of steel to warrant a bunch of rewards. The main one, of course, being the weapon I was after, the Metal Blaster. It looks like a normal laser rifle, but it in fact fires about 7 lasers at once, acting like a hybrid between a tri-beam laser rifle and a shotgun. The plus side being, unlike the tri-beam, it only uses 1 microfusion cell per shot as opposed to 3, and unlike a shotgun, these are still lasers, remember, so the range is nowhere near as abysmal. I would also like to point out, slaves are being rewarded for their efforts in the steel mill with high quality weapons and armour, so long as they can grab a few pieces without dying. I understand that not everybody is going to risk their life for this, but like, why haven't some of the more fanatical ones went in, got some steel, and then got the absurdly powerful weapons and armour from this guy? Are they stupid? Well, back to the task at hand, I am tossed into 3 fights in a makeshift arena. Again, new super overpowered weapon at my disposal, the other combatants don't stand a chance. With my victory, I am permitted to access a slightly less shit part of town where all the raiders live. Normally, I would just blast Asher here without a second thought to get his armour, but if I want to take out everybody, I'm pretty sure I need to side with him. This is because Asher and all of his men are already non-essential and I can deal with them at any time, whereas I need to side with him if I want to be able to kill the other named slaves like Medea. This culminates with a rather anticlimactic showdown with Werner. To be fair, that's kind of the running problem with Fallout 3's main and DLC quest lines. Their final encounters are usually ridiculously easy. Afterwards, I head back to Asher, quickly run through his dialogue, and then begin to clear out any and all raiders I can find throughout the pit. I can't do much with the baby, mind you, as there is no option of kidnapping at this stage, nor can you eat it. That is a mod, remember. Instead, I just decided to toss a grenade into the room and leave. I'll let you all decide what the outcome was. Once my short stint in the pit was over, I just flipped a coin to figure out which DLC I would tackle next. Fate decided it would be Point Lookout, so I guess it's time to cull some tribals and inbred abominations. First stop is the mansion, of course, as it's how you start the questline proper, and the largest enemy encounter in the DLC. Despite what they are wearing, the tribals have some weirdly high resistances. It probably warranted me bringing out the alien blaster, but I'm very much one of those people who saves their rarest resources for far too long, so I just resorted to using the metal blaster and incinerator. To be fair, it's not like they were useless, far from it as you can see. It's just that, compared to everything else I have fought thus far, it's clear they aren't as effective on the tribals as they were on, say, super mutants or the Enclave. Regardless, we persevere and use a good chunk of our ammo, but eventually come out on top. Desmond rewards us with a scolding, as well as a perk that makes us all around better in combat, so long as we're standing still. It's essentially the predecessor to the Rooted perk in Fallout 4. He then sends us off to infiltrate the tribals in their nearby church. The only thing of worth on the way was that against my better judgment, I took out Haley now rather than later. I've brought this up before, but in case you've forgotten, by interacting with the Nuka-Cola machine outside, you can start this strange glitch that causes Haley to have a repair skill of 100, making him the only trader in the entirety of Fallout 3 capable of repairing your equipment to full. Given that jury rigging doesn't exist and some gear can't be repaired at all with other pieces, this is almost a necessity. But, not wanting to run the risk of forgetting about him, I opt to get it over with now. Joining the nearby cult requires taking one mandatory huff of the funky spores, as well as a small down payment on one portion of your brain. It was around here that I also noticed that all of the feral ghouls were no longer aggressive towards me. Keep in mind, I haven't been wearing the ghoul mask since I got power armor training. I think what might have happened is whenever I entered Tranquility Lane ages ago, I was still wearing the ghoul mask along with the Vault 112 jumpsuit. However, whenever I left the simulation, the mask was unequipped. Due to the game removing it like this, I think the effects of the mask are now still in play at all times. You may be wondering how the hell have I only noticed this now? Well, truth be told, I was shooting most ghouls on sight anyway, so I was probably making them hostile that way as opposed to them hating me from the get-go. Anyway, back to what's important, I continue with the cult so that I may find and take out their leader Jackson. Just a handful of mirelurks in the lead up, so nothing extraordinary, although I was informed that the brain was unconscious. So that's something. Jackson, I just turn him to dust before he's even aware of my presence, and then I chat with the brain now that he's awake. It's then back to Desmond for some hacking jammer shenanigans, which results in yet another fight with more tribals. There is a choice to side with the brain here, but much like the choice between Desmond and the brain in 5 minutes, the outcome is pretty much the same. You eviscerate some tribals, watch the house you spent so long defending atomize itself, and then you and Desmond go for a swim to the brain's lair. Once inside, we fight through some lackluster robots and turrets, only to be faced with a glass jar, which I destroy within seconds before it even gets a chance to finish monologuing, let alone fight back. With the questline and DLC finished, Desmond turns his back and is immediately metal blasted for being an asshole throughout this entire experience. I do some cleanup of the important locations with named NPCs around the map at this point, but seeing as most people here have an intellect comparable to a carrot, the list of important NPCs to take out is rather short and uninteresting. Regardless though, I still do it. Once I am done, I travel back to the mainland, where for whatever reason, my first port of call was to go mutant hunting in and around the National Archives. I have had this quest sitting around ever since I first arrived in Rivet City, so no clue why I'm only getting to it now. Well, I head in and make very short work of Sydney. Again, would have been way more beneficial to do this earlier on in the run, so I could have access to her incredibly powerful submachine gun, but whatever. By this point, most of the mutants are either Masters or Overlords. Masters are easy enough with the weapons I have on hand, but I still have to be somewhat cautious around the Overlords, especially those with tri-beams. Even fully decked out in my Hellfire power armor, they will mess me up. Once we're past them, we channel our inner Nicolas Cage to steal the Declaration of Independence, but as we all know, the real reason I'm here is to destroy Button Gwyneth and steal his wig. Being in the downtown DC area, and on the topic of dealing with quests I should have finished a long time ago, I go and finally hunt down the rest of Riley's Rangers. They must have had some sort of psychic link with their boss, because they were hostile towards me on sight. It's not a problem, of course, but I just thought that was funny. At this stage, I was pushing level 30, so it was time to hit up one of the final side quests I could actually complete, that being those. Wiping out the ants is child's play. Well, I say that, yet the only child left in town could most definitely not attempt this without having the flesh melted from his bones. I make my way to the doctor in the tunnels and don't instantly off him because I am a perk whore and want what he can give me. That said, I am not sparing the Ant Queen like he wants, I am simply squishing her and then laying my persuasion on thick so that he gives me my mutation of choice. I just went with the Ant's sight. Perception seemed like it might be useful, I don't know. Anyway, I blast him after the reward and then return to Brian, who is going to be stuck here until he inevitably starves to death due to me not only killing the only people who would take him in, but by systematically murdering every trader I see. I can't imagine he is going to be getting any food deliveries. To knock another location off my list, it was off to Vault 108. Not really any unique people here, but there are Garys, and I just knew that if I didn't take them out, you all would have mentioned them. So I walked in, readied my weapon, and 17, 43, 25, 1, 12, 41, 47, 36, 29, 33, 27, and 32. All this Gary murder pushed me to the max, so here is my stats from now until the end of the run. I also took the perk that bumps any special stats below 10 up to 9. The nuclear one is cool in concept, but ultimately useless at the point when you get it. I had a small handful of side stuff left, but I wanted a slight change of pace, and now that I am maxed out, I thought it was the perfect time to do Broken Steel. On the way to the first mission, I ran into my first albino rat scorpion, one of, if not the tankiest enemies in the game, but more importantly, nightmare fuel for the rest of your life. It's a very good thing that at this point I have a very well spec'd luck build and the metal blaster. With each shot having a chance to land its own crit, it makes very short work of even enemies of this strength. The Enclave are still absolute pushovers just as they've always been. The only thing of worth they do in this epilogue questline is fire a missile barrage at Liberty Prime, effectively killing him until plot convenience digs up his corpse for Fallout 4. I know I mentioned that the Enclave are still relatively weak, and that is true. It's more of a matter of strength in numbers for the Enclave by this stage, so to speed things along I just started two-shotting them with my otherworldly technology. I also made sure to save some of the alien gel that you can rub on your weapons to repair them, seeing how the blaster is weirdly brittle. The objective, if you care, is to retrieve data from the satellite relay and take it back to the Citadel. To jump the gun here, nothing in this DLC matters until the final few moments. It's all just combat with nameless Enclave soldiers, sentry bots, and the occasional Deathclaw. So, in the interest of time, let's just go over those final few moments. Basically, after some exploration in the metro tunnels, we find a train that will take us to the Enclave's new mobile death platform that is armed to the teeth with missiles, the very same that shut down Liberty Prime. Thanks to the Tesla cannon we were handed prior to starting the mission, just about everything goes down with ease. No, please don't let me have an actual difficult encounter for the finale. I'd much rather be given a super powerful weapon for no reason. I see the irony of me saying that given the weapons I have on me, but at least I had to do something for them. The metal blaster was locked behind the tedium of the Pitt, and after Mothership Zeta was released, you needed to beat that before getting the blaster. The Tesla cannon is just given to you with no real build-up. Just, here, take this weapon that is primarily meant for shooting down fucking vertibirds and go use it on people. Mini rant aside, shocking no one, nothing comes even remotely close to impeding my progress as I slaughter my way to the missile controls. Now, what you're supposed to do is mark the missile platform itself as its next target, effectively blowing itself up. But that's not what we're here to do. All of this has been a workaround to deal with the legions of unkillable soldiers in and around the Citadel, which we can now do by simply aiming the missile strike straight at the Citadel. Doing so, of course, destroys it off screen, killing every Brotherhood member stationed in or close to the base at the time of the strike. Once we return, we can finally finish off Sarah Lyons and the handful of knights that she brought with the vertibird for our evac, and then I descend into the remains of the base. Not a lot in here worth salvaging, but you can find more ammo for the alien blaster if that tickles your fancy. As the Brotherhood's relevance to the story is now finally over, given that it's finished, this then allows me to head to other Brotherhood outposts such as GNR and the Purifier and clear out the final stragglers. This includes named individuals as well, such as Scribe Bigsley from before. It also makes any other nameless, constantly respawning Brotherhood soldiers hostile towards us as well. You may be wondering about the outcasts. I was too. In fact, I kind of purposely held off meeting them until I reduced the Brotherhood to dust, in the off chance that there was some unique dialogue with their leader Kasdan. Unfortunate to say there wasn't, which feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, but whatever. You can probably assume what happened to the outcast leadership after my curiosity had been filled. So, in the process of doing my final cleanup of the map, I was heading for Fort Constantine. You may think this is simply due to me having all of the keys thanks to the slaughter that's unfolded today, allowing me to access the T-51B power armor, and that is partially true. The real reason I'm here though is you can launch an ICBM from one of the terminals. I have no idea where it is heading, but if there's even a chance that it kills something, then I might as well push the button. Alright, so I have done all the other DLCs, so there is no reason for me not to take part in the simulation training of Operation Anchorage. This is the one that is quite literally just combat, as that's what it is, a combat simulation. My total time for the DLC clocked in at about 50 minutes, give or take, and pretty much all of it looked and sounded like this. The fight with the general at the end is a little bit more interesting. If for nothing else, he has one of the largest health pools in the game and only uses a sword. He is by no means difficult, I should stress. His reluctance to pick up a firearm is ultimately his biggest weakness, as it allows me to effortlessly cripple his legs with a few well-placed mines and grenades, thus slowing him greatly and allowing me to remain at a safe distance for the entire fight. After he is deleted, we are returned to the real world to grab my rewards, the most important of which is of course the winterized T51B power armor that never really degrades and gives you power armor training if you didn't already have the perk. The other rewards don't interest me in the slightest, so I whip out my alien blaster to let these outcasts here receive a similar fate to that of the rest of their order. I was actually convinced some of them may be permanently essential, but turns out that was not the case, and now this underground lab is in desperate need of a good spring cleaning. With that, we are just about done, although I know of at least one killable character that remains. If I'm gonna go out, it needs to be in a spectacular blaze of glory, much like the Fallout 4 run, and I have the perfect idea for it. I head on over to the National Guard depot, where after disposing of a few robots, I can come to this locked door. Normally, to get past, you would need to complete an unmarked side quest, which has you finding codes for the bunker from different members of a family scattered across the wasteland. That's way too time consuming for me right now, so instead I just use the good old third-person camera swivel to position it in such a way that I can activate the button on the other side of the door, immediately opening it. Once inside, I claim my prize, the experimental Merv. By all rights, the single strongest weapon in the game, as it is a fat man that fires multiple mini-nukes at once. I don't think anything can survive a direct blast from this, most certainly not me. So I return to my tower and prepare myself to reach the heavens, finishing the game and proving you can't really beat Fallout 3 by killing everything because the kids are immortal, but who cares, let's all watch the human meat rocket. Regardless, that's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe as I try to have one of these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.